week on Perfect Game Softball, we focus on the universities that at times, let's be honest, get overlooked. Schools at the NAIA level. But it's college softball. It's intense. They battle. We're talking about more than 250 schools. We're talking about 77,000 NAIA athletes from border to border. And by the way, nearly $1 billion in scholarships. And that matters with the cost of education helping out parents. My co-host, Sierra Romero. My name is Daron Sutton. Really excited about this show, Romo. Let's start there before we tell folks who our guests are. The concept of smaller college softball, but yet so many are out there playing it, and it matters just as much to them as those that are going to end up going to Oklahoma City. By the way, their Oklahoma City is in Columbus, Georgia. But NAIA softball, excited to drill down on two elite players.
Definitely. And I mean, I think at times, again, like you said, NAIA gets overlooked, and I think that the players do too. And I have played against NAIA players that have played pro, and they're just as elite as any other Division I softball player. Sometimes people take a little bit longer to mature and grow into the athlete that they're going to be. But also now with the transfer portal, there's so many other opportunities for athletes to test themselves and see how far, they can possibly go. But these athletes, I mean, they do it right. They play the game the right way. They get after it. They work their butts off. And these are elite athletes still at the end of the day, no matter what division it is. And I think it's just something that's important to note because they work just as hard as the rest of us.
Southern Oregon's one of the best programs in the nation, and they have an amazing hitter on their team. Riley Donovan will join us. We'll talk hitting with Donovan, but this is someone who handles the pitching at times, working behind the plate, and then carries the offense, a dual load for an incredible slugger.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that's important to note with her is when she gets into the box, she's going to make it known that you should be scared. I think all the way from probably the way she walks there to she gets in the box, you're probably already immediately hit with that intimidation factor with her. So I think that with her, the important thing is obviously trying to pitch around her, but she obviously knows her zone and knows what she can work with. And I would imagine catching helps with that too. Sometimes I think catchers can be some of the most elite hitters because they know the strike zone. They see what these pitches are doing. They just have they have an in almost with the pitches. They know what everything's going to do, where it's going to end up. And I feel like maybe she's taken that as part of an advantage for her as a hitter. Cause I mean, it certainly showed with the power numbers that she puts up right now as a power hitter.
The NAIA level out in Fullerton, California. It's Hope International University. They earned an at-large bid into the postseason. They hope to make a run at winning that Women's College World Series at the NAIA level as well. And I'm always careful. I so like to talk about the individual on this show, not always mom and dad, or dad was a star, or mom was a star softball player. But I'm sitting with someone who always was in conversations, and sisters and brothers were mentioned. So I know I won't offend the nation's strikeout leader, Allie Puente from Hope, when I say one of the most fun parts about her story is her catcher is her twin sister, Cassie, and her first baseman is Emmy, who, by the way, slugged close to 600. That's the fun part of the story. Now, individually, Allie's dynamic.
I mean, at the end of the day, the situation she had is unique and awesome in itself. I mean, she talks about, being able to pitch to her catcher, getting also live reps for live ABs. It's not often that you have that. I mean, I had my sister growing up, but she almost feels like has the whole team. So it's kind of cool to just see how they kind of grew up together training. But what you're going to get with her is a very mature pitcher. I feel like, I don't know, she seems like an old soul in a way. She just is very wise when she talks pitching and when she talks about the game. She's just very professional. And I think that that's an important thing to note because she just steps in and she gets the job done. I don't feel like she makes the game or her job more than what it is. She just goes in knowing what she needs to do and what she has to execute. And she always has the backup plan. Hey, if I'm feeling off here, this is my adjustment. And I think that that's what great players do because not everybody is on 100% of the time. I don't know anybody that is, especially with the long softball season that we have and with softball being a game of failure. But it seems like she's mastered that and she has, her go-to, but she also has her backup, which is still just as successful no matter what approach she takes.
So real quick, as we send it to break, her numbers last year, 215 innings, 361 strikeouts. This year, regular season, 232 innings, 374 strikeouts. Missing bats at a pace that is hard to even understand. And by the way, her perfect game against Antelope Valley earlier this year. Then prior to that, she threw one against Embry-Riddle. Behind the plate both times, her sister, twin sister, the catcher. So as we talked about, the focus of this show, softball, NAIA softball, a level that sometimes gets overlooked, and there are some athletes that are incredible. And some of them, like my co-host, it turns out to be a family story. That is Allie Puente's story. She is incredible at Hope International University. It's right there in Southern California in Fullerton, tied to the Mascarenas softball name, which we know very, very well. Alex Simbri on her coaching staff. But Allie Puente spends time with us now, the nation's leader in strikeouts heading into postseason. Allie, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
I think for us, for all of us that are watching, and I did this on the baseball show too, dedicated to the NAIA, the question for you is simple. Why did you choose Hope? When you came to the point where you were making your college choice and trying to figure out what was the right fit for you, I know your sister was ahead of you, but why did you choose Hope?
So I chose Hope because I felt like this was my new home. I was at a previous school, but due to COVID, they shut down and they got rid of all sports. So we had to make some calls, and I felt like Hope was my best option for what they could offer me. And honestly, the girls made it feel like home as soon as I got here.
What has it been like working on your pitching approach? Typically, I talk a lot of the hitting approach, but I'm always interested in like getting into a pitcher's mind. What is your pitching approach to be the nation's leader in strikeouts?
Honestly, I just keep the approach of go after people. It doesn't matter who's in that box, who we're playing, where they're from. Our plan is just to attack everybody with every single pitch we got.
Are you a pitcher that will look at a lot of film, or are you somebody who maybe is making more so like in-game adjustments based off of like what you see? I know some pitchers maybe do both. I'm just kind of curious because I know that you're not going to have your best stuff every day. So sometimes it's hitting that spot perfectly, even if there's not a lot of movement, because you can still get people out even when your stuff's not moving. So I'm just kind of curious what that preparation for you looks like.
So I like to make in-game decisions and changes. Not everybody is the same. And quite frankly, even hitters, they don't bring the same thing every single day. So I like to go once through the lineup and then remember, okay, what did she do? How can we approach this differently? Or if we're going to attack the same thing as well.
Allie, when did you fall for this sport? I'm sure you're a great, well-rounded athlete, but there has to be something within you that has you practice for as long as you have and work as hard as you have. At what age did you fall for this sport and why?
Oh, probably when I was 5. You know, I have 2 sisters and the household has just always been so competitive. And I think what happened was having siblings made the sport fun. There was always there's a basketball option, but there was nothing that compared to softball in our house. It was just always, let's go outside and let's go play catch. Let's go hit. Let's go do something. So I think at an early age, we figured out that it was fun for all of us and we just ran with it.
Fresno, California, Clovis High School is where you were. Describe the Puente home then. You just gave me a little bit of a snapshot, certainly, with your sisters and your twin sister, Cassie, and your older sister, Emily, both play with you in college. Marisela and Oscar are your parents. But describe home, the heartbeat of the Puente home, some of the values that matter.
So in the home, we're just stay on top of everything. It doesn't matter what it is in life. And we also look after each other. That was our main thing. And also leaving home, that was kind of what we carried. It was always look after each other, push each other, and make sure that no matter what, we have each other's backs. And I think growing up, that's what also helped us get to that point, because we knew no matter what happened, where we were at, it was always the 3 of us together.
When it comes to like the training side, I grew up training a lot with my sister, Sydney, and I still have 2 other younger siblings that I trained with too, but that age gap was kind of big for us. But can you talk a little bit about how special that was when it came to the training side? Just because there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's easy to kind of fall off, be like, I don't want to do it today, but maybe having that extra support and it being your sister saying, hey, let's get after it. Let's put some work in. What was that like growing up and how did it help you?
It was so nice because my twin sister is my catcher. So whenever I wanted, it was like, let's go throw a bullpen. And on the days where I was just not feeling it, she would put her gear on and say, let's go throw a bullpen. We have things to do. And then it helps with having Emmy as my older sister, because as we're throwing that bullpen, she's like, well, let me get some live at bats while we're at it. So it just like everything meshed together, and it helps. We help each other, because it's always like, well, let's go the further step. Let's go do this together. And we kind of just pull each other along as the journey went.
That's crazy. Like, to think pitcher, catcher, hitter, like you all are getting the reps that you need. So it's almost like a dream for you, almost as like a kid, because you don't really even need to be like, hey, mom, dad, I need you to come do this. Nope, I got my other sisters over here to come help me. Like, I mean, that's awesome. Unfortunately for me, I didn't have any pitchers in my family, so I had to go hit off other teammates or whatnot. But can you talk a little bit about the process so far in school and how you've developed as a pitcher, and what's been the biggest thing mentally for you? Because I know with pitching, like, you have the ball every time, right? That's a lot of pressure on you. How do you handle that mentally for those younger kids watching, for some tips?
Honestly, you just have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable in the circle. As a pitcher, you get put in a lot of uncomfortable situations that, quite frankly, you don't want to be in, but that's just how softball works. And finding out how to mentally find a place to get to a happy place when you're in an extra inning game or a one-run game, even a playoff or championship game, it helps, because when you're throwing that ball, you're in control of the game. It's on your tempo. And when you're able to find that place, it's kind of like, okay, been here before. We can do this. We know we are physically and mentally capable of achieving this goal.
That's awesome.
Allie, be very descriptive of your pitch types. I always like to ask my pitchers, as a former baseball pitcher in college and professionally, I always like to ask my pitchers, it's as if you're bringing all your pitches into a party and you want to be polite and introduce them one by one, and a little bit about them, who they are. So characteristically, introduce your pitches one by one and tell us something about them.
So basically, I don't have a ton of pitches. I focus on, hitting a corner, and it's pretty much every pitch I throw, you got to spin it. So rise ball, drop ball, curveball, screwball, you just have to focus on spinning it. If velocity's not there, sometimes my velocity's not there. Every time I kind of step in that circle, it's always like, let's see how hard I can spin the ball today. And that pretty much goes for all my pitches. I try to see how much can I move it to the outside corner? How much can I start it low and get it as high as I could on the inside corner? It's just like little things like that for my pitches.
Okay, that's a good introduction. That makes all the sense in the world. You have missed so many bats this year, leading the nation in strikeouts for, if you don't see the graphic down below, it's, folks, 232 innings pitched heading into postseason, 374 strikeouts, and an ERA that I have to squint real tiny to see. It's 0.54. It's been one of those years for you. The put away, are there times you have defenders, and they're good defenders, obviously, working behind you. Are there times as a pitcher your mentality is, though, and it's some of those messes that you say you're in with base runners on, where you tell yourself, I need to put this hitter away. I want to take any question out of it. Do you seek to strike out at times, especially in times with runners on base?
Yes. It's especially in those close moments, I try to go after a strikeout like that or any time like that, because it's like, if we can handle it ourselves and we can get that out so that nobody else on the field has to stress about it, it's more comforting to me knowing that I know they have my back, but I'm going to have theirs as well. I'm not going to let a ball get hit where they don't have a chance at it.
That's awesome. And then when it comes to like your team, the team aspect of it, obviously with pitching, the ball's in your hand constantly. What is your guys' practices like? What does it look like for your defense? How are they able to have your back on defense and even on offense? Like, what are some of the things that they really, pride themselves in and how they help you?
So what I can see is they focus on the little things. And this year has been the staple for us. And I know outfield really works on it as well as the infield. They focus on the little things that we have overlooked for so many years. And I remember the first time seeing that in the first couple of practices we had, I was like, okay. And in the games, now I'm like, I remember them going through that. I remember them making sure to nitpick that little thing is what helps us win games.
Was that something that maybe the coaches noticed and it became like evident in practice? Like, was it going back to fundamental drills, or was it just like making sure you guys can make the little plays because you still practice the big ones? How did that look at practice?
It was definitely the little plays. Our coaches saw that, we could make these big spontaneous plays, but sometimes our routine ground balls or fly balls were not looking pretty. And it was kind of like a nerve-wracking thing to watch. So early on, they made it a big deal that we're going to make sure we get our reps correctly, mechanics are to a T, and that everybody is kind of working as a unit so that we are all on the same page.
Before Daron jumps back in, something I just wanted to point out for like the viewers watching, like to take note of this conversation, because you can't play softball if you can't play catch, right? If you can't field it, just throw it from point A to point B, like that's extremely important. And sometimes even somebody at the higher, more elite level, like you guys, like you still sometimes lose sight of that. You're like, oh shoot, I'm rushing this, I'm making errors, and I'm not making the simple plays that ultimately make up the game. Because usually it's not some crazy hard play that determines a game, but it's usually like a little mental error, something small that you're like, dang, I make that play 100% of the time in practice, and then I just messed it up in the game. So I definitely think that that's something to note, that even the best, they still do this. They go back to those little things and they put an emphasis on just fielding a simple ground ball and making the play. Because I don't know why I'm on defense, I'm at second base. Sometimes the hardest balls are the ones right at you. The ones that come right at you are sometimes the most difficult, and they require the least amount of movement or athleticism. You just got to field it and throw it, and sometimes that's the hardest one. So I just think that's a good little thing to point out with what you guys are doing, because it's important and it matters.
Yes, it does.
Allie, so when we take a look, and you're speaking to an NAIA alum who played in the NAIA Baseball World Series, obviously my co-host, Power 5 All-American, but I understand your level of sports. I played it and started at a Power 5 school and found a home there. 250 schools, 77,000 athletes at the NAIA level, nearly $800 million in scholarships. I think that gets overlooked a lot for athletes helping families. From your eyes, let's put Allie's goggles on and take a look at the world around NAIA softball. Give us your perspective, because you know about all levels. You have friends that play at all levels. Give us your perspective of what NAIA softball looks like.
NAIA softball is very competitive, and we are very much overlooked. But what I think is we have a lot of hidden gems in NAIA. We have a lot of girls who maybe transferred from other schools, and girls who commit to NAIA who are just very good. And it's all across the country. It's not just East Coast, West Coast, South. It is across the country. That's why when it comes to playoffs, it's very fun to watch, because you get to see all these girls that you don't get to see in probably the regular season compete against other teams across the country. And it is very fun to watch because you get to see a lot of good people play.
Yeah, that's a great answer. The World Series, by the way, May 25th through the 31st in Columbus, Georgia. If you're in that neck of the woods, go check out amazing softball, certainly. So I have to get not just the, hey, when we were kids, or hey, we got live ABs in, but I need the deep scouting report. Emmy finishes the regular season with 8 home runs and slugs close to 600. Cassie, your catcher, works behind the plate, starts 36 times, slugs 480. I need the sister scouting report, like the intense softball scouting report on both players.
I mean, they can just flat out hit, and I think that's what they can bring it defensively. They're very good defensively, and I know when they both step in the box, they have that such competitive mindset that I'm like, ooh, if they're really mad right now, this ball's going to get hit very, very hard. And it's just fun to watch because, when they're on, it's pretty good.
All right. That's a good scouting report. Thank you for your time. Congratulations on what you've accomplished, leading the nation in strikeouts, an incredible year. And best of luck to you, your team. Have a wonderful run through the postseason. And thanks for introducing NAIA softball from your eyes.
Thank you so much.
The nation's leader in strikeouts at the NAIA level. When we come back, we're going to go to Oregon. The nation's leader in home runs. Riley Donovan will join us at the NAIA level. Romo and I, glad to have you with us. This is Perfect Game Softball, hanging out on Perfect Game TV. So as we told you, the focus of this show, greatness at the NAIA level and understanding the NAIA level through the eyes of the athletes. We're going to talk to an elite pitcher in just a minute. Let's talk to an elite catcher and an elite slugger as we chat with Riley Donovan. Look, we've gotten to understand her program at Southern Oregon over the last couple of years, conversations with her head coach, We really love that on this platform. And now their heartbeat, their catcher, their slugger, 20 home runs, leading the NAIA, leading the nation. Riley Donovan spends time with us now. Riley, thanks for hanging out with Sierra and I. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
So when you come from California and you play at the level at which you play, which is a very high level, you've had a successful journey. I always ask NAIA athletes, why'd you choose Southern Oregon? Why was it the right fit for you? Now, I understand the CIS coming before you was important. I get that. I know that you were knowledgeable there, but it still had to suit you. Why in the end did it suit you?
Yeah, totally. I think that a big thing for me coming out of a junior college, I really wanted to compete at a really high level. And that was one of my biggest things. And obviously my sister was a huge thing. She came here, she made an impact. This whole team, her team in those 2 years that she was there, they were just the building blocks of this program. And just to see the hunger that this program had, along with the sense of family that they had, it felt right for me, along with just the area of Ashland. It's beautiful. It's a small town. It was just perfect for me, just that all of the things.
So I was looking at your stats, and in the home run category specifically, okay, we're going to talk about batting average too, but in the home run category, you had 8 your first year, and now you've been consistently at 20. So what was the biggest adjustment, or what was the biggest maybe thing you tweaked in your swing to get those home run balls?
Yeah. I don't know if I necessarily changed anything about my swing, actually. I think that I've tried, obviously, to be as consistent as possible with my swing. I think a lot of it has to do with my mindset. My first year, I think that it was coming back from COVID, right? So getting back into the groove of things. And then I left my JUCO feeling amazing. And then I dropped from not playing softball for 8 months. And I kind of lost my mentality in the box. Like I remember like thinking like, what was it that made me feel so confident? And it's actually funny. I remember after my first year, I looked back at like my notes, and our coach at my JUCO had us like write a letter to ourselves in a year. And I wrote something along the lines of like, don't forget your approach. Like, don't forget that. I don't remember the exact words, but it was literally like reminding me of everything that I was doing back then. And I think that in that first year, I was still working through that and working through my role as a teammate on the new team and all of those things. So yeah, I think the mentality was really what it was.
It's really interesting to like hear you say, because so many times, you know, I'll ask an athlete like, oh, what'd you change or what is it? And every single time I'm talking to an elite athlete, it's never that they changed anything specifically. It's always the mental approach. I don't feel like there's really many tweaks that are being made on the hitting side, because I feel like you kind of like figure that out in the beginning and then you just like ride through it and make the most out of whatever swing you have. But it's interesting, and it resonates a lot with me, like what you said, because I was away from the game for 3 years because of my knee injury. So same thing, trying to remember what was my approach? How did I step into the plate, like, or step into the box? Like, how did that feel? What did that look like? So it's really cool to know that you kind of like try to go, I mean, you found your notes, but like, you know, you try to go back deeper in your mind to figure out, okay, who was I? What made me that strong elite hitter? Because that's what worked for you. And it's a mentality thing, because that's confidence at the end of the day, right? Like if you feel that confidence, you feel like you can hit anything and all of a sudden it looks like a beach ball. But I know you may not know exactly what the note said, but what is your hitting approach now? What is it that you step in the box and you're thinking, or maybe you're looking for? What does that look like for somebody like you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I think that keeping it very simple is something that I do well with. Like it's either less than 2 strikes or 2 strikes. Those are the two mentalities I have. And if I'm in less than 2 strikes, it's okay, something I like. Like if I like it, I'm going to swing. And that's pretty broad, but that if you see some of my at-bats, it's actually pretty comical, because some balls, I'm like, I get a good bat on it, but I like look back on the video and I'm like, how did I hit that? But it looked good to me. So then I swing and I get a base hit, so that's my less than two strike approach. And then two strike is just, all right, we're protecting anything that's close. Like I'm not letting anything that get by me that could ring me up. So, and that's what's worked best for me. If I try to make it bigger than that, usually I'll just be out of myself, start swinging out of my shoes or letting things go by that are my pitch, so.
Riley, when it comes down to catching innings, do you catch a majority of your team's innings?
Yeah, I would say most of the innings I get them.
So that leads me to this, because no matter the diamond sport, softball or baseball, the catcher at times, their offense is going to suffer because you're mentally and physically being put through it. You bear the responsibility of leading your pitcher and of leading your defense. How have you been able to push past that? I know you talked about the evolution of your mind, but what else have you done to be able to, when you get back behind the plate, flush the AB that you didn't like a moment ago, or not be so into yourself that you homered again a moment ago? How have you managed to differentiate the two Rileys, Riley the catcher, Riley the hitter, and succeed both ways?
Yeah, totally. I think that's another thing I kind of struggled with my first year here. I think that can be extremely hard. And sometimes for people, it can be a lot easier to have a physical reset almost. And for me, my first year, I've done it all 3 years here, or I haven't done it. It's my pitchers. My pitchers, like no matter what, wherever I am in the dugout, if I was the third out or if I was on base when the third out was made, I run into the dugout and the pitcher will come find me as I'm putting on my gear and they'll give me a high five. And my first year, I can't lie to you. Like sometimes I'd look at them and just be like give them a really negative, just like soft, because I was frustrated with whatever the outcome was. And then after talking about it and really realizing like it sounds silly, but now like that is my reset button. So if I did have a bad at bat or there was some type of bad outcome, my pitcher will come up to me in the dugout and like I'll stand up, I'll take a deep breath and I'll give him like one solid high five. And then that's like, okay, I got to focus on defense now. I got to focus on my pitcher, my infield, all of the things. And for me, that's really worked. And I think for a lot of people, they just have to find one of those little things that's consistent that will allow them to reset every time. Because then if you can find that consistent piece, then it just every time you're like, okay, this is it. I'm good. Water off a duck's back kind of thing.
The NAIA softball, the Women's World Series, May 25th through 31st in Columbus, Georgia. 2 years ago, you were the MVP of that event. You went a crazy 11 of 17. You had big homers, including late in the championship game. As you look back on your team winning that championship, and you guys won it prior to your arrival in 19 as well, but as you look back on that championship and being able to lock in at the most important time of the season, and you've talked about your first year there, how it was a learning process. How important were those last handful of games to you? How unforgettable will it always be?
Man, that postseason was a wild postseason. And we really struggled in that postseason. I don't know if you guys saw what we did in our conference tournament, but we were number one in the conference and we were out in 3. Like we did not do what we wanted to do in that tournament. And it was a mess for our team. But I think that was exactly what we needed to turn it up going further. And I just think that for me personally, I and most of our team did, but it was really hard. And then going into the national tournament, we lost our second game, I believe. And there were multiple just kind of barriers that we were working through in that game. And we came out the next day just like we got punched in the face, and we were kind of like just so taken aback. And I just remember we had this practice and we all were just like, we work so hard all year long. There is no reason why we shouldn't be able to work past this. And that was really a turning point for me. And I'll never forget that, and how that conversation and that game really was what made me stay locked in, especially with my role as a DP. That was just, it helped me stay locked in for the whole tournament. And it was a pretty amazing ride for us.
I love that you keep such a simple mindset with hitting, even though hitting sometimes can really not be that simple and it can be very overwhelming. I think that the best hitters are able to keep that simple mindset even when things aren't going their way. But that's not to say too that your mechanics and everything else, they're definitely special. They're definitely really good. Could you share maybe one specific drill that you focus on a lot that's helped you with your consistency in the box? Because you don't hit, mid to high 400s every year on accident. It's a lot of work, whether it's mentally, physically, like you're putting in the work. So I'd love to know what that is and just share with our audience.
Yeah, something that I use a lot, and I used it more, I'd say, in my earlier years of my college career, but gosh, what's it called? Like the mask that covers your eyes and you only have this much to see. I think do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it called is it swivel vision?
Yeah, swivel vision. Yeah. And it's like,
Wow.
but you can't see like anything but like right here. And I use that a lot in my first year, because I think keeping your eyes on the ball, it sounds so simple, but can be so difficult sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like you pull your head.
You can't hit it if you can't see it, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that your swing, like, I mean, I've seen some people with the ugliest swings and they have the best outcomes. Like sometimes your swing actually doesn't matter. It matters if you're seeing the ball and you have a good mentality. And of course, like good mechanics do come into play sometimes, but like some people, like it just works for them. And I think that as long as you're seeing the ball, that's something that I really worked on throughout my career, was just seeing the ball. Cause that's, I would say, the biggest one.
It's funny just hearing you say that, just because whenever, if I'm struggling or something's going on, like it's something as simple as saying, I just got to see the ball. Like lately, I feel like if I'm struggling, I'm like, all I got to do is catch the ball with my bat. How hard can that be? Obviously, it's a lot harder than that. I talked to Sue Inquist, and she's always like, I think all of us softball players and baseball players are crazy because we're trying to hit a round ball with like a round bat. Like, what are we doing? Like we're psychos. But it's just funny because you can look at it that side too. But then like when you're really not wanting to get in your head, you're like, I'm just trying to catch the ball with my bat. Like that should be easy, right? So it's really interesting that you hone in on like the vision side of it, because a lot of times, a lot of athletes, their eyes are moving so much, they're not actually seeing them like make contact. They're already looking at where they think the ball is going to end up. And now they pulled off it, they rolled over, they missed it. So that's really interesting that you use that a lot. I actually used those as well. So that's funny.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I actually just saw a clip the other day of Barry Bonds saying that exact same thing. He's like, I'm just catching the ball. I'm replacing the glove with a bat. That was just a really funny clip. So it's funny that you say that now.
I love that. Riley, that you reference that clip. That always is what surprises me and it excites me about your generation. I think we put young athletes into a box that they're only looking at the now and they're only looking at their colleagues. Instead, you're listening to the words of one of the greatest hitters to ever live. Doesn't matter the sport, baseball or softball, but one of the greatest hitters to ever live. You're being interviewed by one of the other greatest hitters to live in either sport. So that's what's pretty cool here. My final question for you, and we appreciate you joining us. Through your eyes, tell us about NAIA softball. From your perspective, and your opinion matters. We're going to have Allie Puente down from Southern California, who led the nation in strikeouts. We want to hear her thoughts too. But, we're talking about 250 schools. We're talking about 77,000 athletes, a lot of scholarship money that gets taken advantage of. So, Riley, from your eyes, describe NAIA softball.
Yeah. NAIA softball, it's competitive and it is fun to watch, to play. And there's I definitely think it's a little bit underrated. But I don't know. I think it's just like any other level where we're just a bunch of athletes trying to compete and trying to get to the highest point that we can as a team and as individuals. I guess that's what I'd say. I'm not really sure, but that's probably what I got for you.
No, I like the answer. I'm an NAIA baseball alum, so I love the answer, and we appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Best of luck in this 2023 postseason, and also enjoy your summer. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a good day, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
This is Perfect Game Softball on Perfect Game TV.